What's going on, guys? Stefan, S&E's Garage. Today we're going to be doing some electrical diagnosis and repair on our 2010 Wrangler JKU. Alright guys, so we're having an issue here where we're getting an intermittent P2181, which is a cooling system performance code. We're also noticing that our cooling fans are running a lot and we're having an intermittent hard start. Now I'm going to get in the Jeep. I'm going to show you something that I noticed that happens when this is going on. Alright guys, so this Jeep has sat all night. It has not been on. As a matter of fact, just to prove a point to you, let's go ahead and open the hood. I'm gonna grab the exhaust manifold. Hang on. Alright, so here's the engine. Here's the exhaust. My hand's touching it. It's ice cold. Now let's go ahead and get in. And I want you to take a look at something. Watch our coolant temperature gauge. It's registering that the engine's at operating temperature. Now, your cooling temperature sensor is the single most important sensor for engine performance. If that sensor isn't perfect, your Jeep's not going to run. So watch what happens when we try to start it. It's not going to start because it's not getting the proper amount of fuel to start a cold engine. Now, what I went ahead and did to get it to start when I needed to use it the other day is I came under here. Here's your coolant temp sensor right here, right on the thermostat housing. I went ahead and I unplugged it. Alright, so you'll see here, sensor is unplugged. When I turn the ignition on, you're going to notice that my gauge is going to drop back down to cold, like you see, and now it'll start right up. Now I don't want it to run because I want it to stay cold. I just wanted to prove a point to you. So now we're going to go ahead and ohm this sensor out. This is called a thermistor. That is the type of sensor that your cooling temperature sensor is, and the resistance changes based on temperature. So this Jeep has been sitting outside all night. We have a brand new coolant temp sensor right here. This is Standard Motors, part number TX195. I'm going to go ahead and drop one of these in the video description below. We're going to ohm this sensor out, and then we're going to compare it to this sensor. And they should be relatively close. If they're not, we know that sensor is the issue, and we're going to go ahead and change it. Now, I like to live a little dangerously. So we are not going to drain the coolant here. We are going to change this on the fly. We're going to pull that out, drop this one in real quick, and hopefully we don't lose a lot of coolant. If you leave your radiator cap on, you shouldn't really lose that much because the system will, in essence, be under a quote-unquote vacuum because you're only opening one side. So let's go ahead and get the voltmeter, ohm this one out, ohm that one out, and see where we're at. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to ohm out our known good sensor here. So let's go ahead and get it out of the box, and we're just going to put the meter onto these two pins. So we're going to go just like this, and we're going to monitor what it reads at. So we are at about 13.5 kilo ohms, and let's let it, oh, you know what, it's warming up because it's on my chest. So figure around 13.5 kilo ohms. So now let's go ahead and do the same thing with the sensor that is still in the Jeep. Alright guys, so we went ahead and put our alligator clips on there. You'll see we are only at 1.5 kilo ohms. So we are way off. This thing has way less resistance than it should at this temperature, which is why we're getting the cooling system performance code, and which is also why we're having our hard start and our cooling fan issue, because right now the Jeep thinks it's hotter than it is. So that right there is my smoking gun. That tells me, yes, this sensor is bad. The wiring from the connector back to the ECU is good. We know that because, number one, when we unplugged it, we watched our gauge drop back down to cold because it is now an open circuit. And if there were resistance somewhere in that circuit, unplugging it wouldn't have fixed our issue. So let's go ahead. We're going to pop this old sensor out, pop the new one in. It's real simple. If you'd like, you could drain your coolant just a little bit, you know, just to get it below that thermostat housing. We're not going to bother. We're going to do it on the fly really quick. I should be able to get it fast enough. So here's our new sensor. Let me just zoom you out real quick so you can see it. You'll see here that it does have a nice sealing, like Teflon tape sort of coating on the threads, so you don't have to add any to it. It'll seal when you screw it in. Let's go ahead and get a long socket and extension, pull this thing apart. Alright guys, so I'm trying my hardest here to set this camera up because it's a little tricky. But all you're going to need is a 19mm socket and an extension. Probably have like a 10-inch extension on this, and it's going to slide right over this coolant temp sensor. So we're going to go ahead and just very carefully work on getting this out. Again, we are doing this on the fly, so we are going to have some sort of coolant loss. Just make sure we're backing it out here. Beautiful spring morning here. The birds are chirping. Okay, let's get some of this wiring out of our way here. And like I said, the coolant, like you just saw, should just stay in because we do have the radiator cap in place. But we went ahead and started that. Let's go ahead. Just very carefully thread this in. Okay, we're going to call that good. Let's go ahead and plug our sensor in. I don't like the way that's facing. Let's see if I can tighten it a little bit more. No, we're not going to play games with that. We're going into aluminum. Alright, let's go ahead and plug it in. Now let's go ahead, hop into the car and see where we're at. So if we turn our ignition on now, you'll see that our coolant gauge stays at the C, which is good. Our check engine light is definitely going to be on because I unplugged that sensor before. But you'll see that it starts right up now. So let's go ahead, let's grab our scan tool, clear the codes, take it for a ride. I'm going to let it run, just going to monitor that, make sure it's not leaking at all. It's worth mentioning this old sensor that we removed is a plastic piece of junk, to say the least. It's not brass like the one that we removed. It's a cheap piece of plastic, so I can't really say I'm surprised that it failed. And that standard motor sensor that we put in is definitely an upgrade. I'm not sure if this is the original one. Like I said, this thing has 270,000 miles on it. I'm not sure what has and what hasn't been replaced. But with that being said, let's clear the codes. Alright guys, so we're using our tried and true X-Tool XP508. This is great for if you're just trying to clear codes and look at, you know, data history or data stream on just the engine or the transmission. This isn't going to give you a full workup on the car like, you know, like the X-Tool D8 or something like that. This is good for clearing codes. So let's go ahead, let it turn on, let it run. You'll see here's the boot up screen. Let it do its thing. Alright guys, so here we are scanning modules. We're probably going to have a different code here because I just unplugged the sensor altogether. So let's go ahead, let's go to DTC report. Yeah, high circuit, so P0118. I'm going to throw that in the video description as well because that is another code that could lead to a failed coolant temp sensor. But let's go ahead, back away from this. We're going to clear them. Got to turn the key off to clear it. It'll say it clears, but the light's still on. You'll see. So let's very quickly just go ahead. Exit automatic scan. Okay, let's just go into, again, we'll go into auto scan. Okay, system selection, powertrain control. I'm not going to start the engine. We're just going to clear the codes because we know what the code was. Cleared successfully. Start it up. Lights off. And you'll see now that the engine is starting to warm up, you'll see our gauge is going to start creeping up. So again, we're going to let it run till it warms up. We're going to check our cooling fan operation because that sensor directly correlates when your cooling fans turn on and off. So we're just going to make sure everything's okie dokie, and then we're going to call it a day. Alright guys, so our upper hose here is hot. Bottom is hot. We ain't got no leaks. Coolant temp is right in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and call it fixed. Fans haven't turned on yet, but it's probably going to take a while because it ain't really that hot out. But with that said, real easy fix. All you need is a voltmeter to ohm it out and check your resistance. You don't even have to drain the coolant. As you saw, we had absolutely no coolant come out of there. And it's quick, easy, painless. You don't have to pay the shop to do stuff like this. So if this video helped you fix your Jeep Wrangler, this is for a 2007 to 2011 with a 3.8 liter. Please like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.